Next guest has some thoughts on this and what else might be happening. Please welcome to the show Rebecca Walser, the president of Walser Wealth Management. Rebecca, we were talking off air. I mean, every place it seems like I'm turning now makes me a little nervous. What do you think?
Yeah, Scott, we can explain this mathematically. So, I jump straight to the math if I can. So right now, the average 30-year mortgage rate is about 3.86. Last year, this time, it was 5.13. So what's happening is rates are going up so fast that when rates were so low, people were able to buy a lot more house because obviously the interest charges were a lot lower. Once interest rates just start to go up, that takes a lot more of that monthly budget someone can afford towards interest, less on principal, which means that the prices of the houses can't be as much. As people get priced out of buying the house they would have otherwise bought from what they would have been able to afford, they move back into rentals. The problem with the rentals is we know we absolutely have a rental shortage in this country. We've known this for a long time. We've known that builders are not keeping pace with the amount of people that will rent and the rental growth. So what's happening is the rentals are contracting. We have less, which means the demand makes their prices go way up. And as people can't afford the demand closer to their work, they have to move out into a further and further suburb outside. And that obviously increases the demand there. And that makes those prices go up. So everywhere you see, prices are going up. And not only from the inflationary situation, but also because of the reaction on the interest rate front.
All right. So let me walk you through this and see what you think. We talked about it in the last segment just a little bit, but shelter, labor, and food all went up in the last CPI number, right? The thing that came down was crude oil, right? We haven't solved our crude oil problem here. It's coming off a little bit, I think, because if you don't have a job, you don't need crude oil, right? I mean, the economy is getting worse, and that's going to affect demand ultimately somewhere down the road. So we've seen it come off. But my problem is we're going to continue to fight this inflationary pressure with higher interest rates because that's all the Fed can do. And so you might see the Fed funds rate 4.5%, or 5% towards the end of this year. But it just takes one time for the crude oil to catch fire and shoot up to 100, 110 bucks a barrel. And all of a sudden, we lose all of those gains we got from higher interest rates and driving down the price of oil. And we're back where we started, but we have interest rates that have almost tripled.
Yeah, so I will tell you, the price of crude oil, I'm so glad you dissected the inflation numbers, Scott, because so many people just talk about, inflation's come down, and they don't dissect it like that. Let's be honest. Crude oil has come down for two main reasons. Number one, demand destruction. You have it go up just as much as you said, and you're right. People can't afford it. They just reroute their lives. They refigure out their lives, and demand goes down. That's demand destruction. Number two, we had a strategic release of petroleum reserves, a million barrels per week, all the way through October. And I got to say something to you. A lot of people don't know this. The federal government every year sets its COLA adjustments for the next year for Medicare and Social Security based off of the inflation reads in July, August, and September. So I think it's pretty nefarious, actually, that this government intentionally started to release these crude oil reserves through June through October, because I believe they were intentionally trying to manipulate the inflationary signals so that they could reduce the COLA. And I don't necessarily blame them because let's face it, Scott, we are bankrupt and we don't have the ability to actually have a 9.5% COLA adjustment, which is right now what we're looking at having for Social Security. We can't afford that in this country. We can't afford to raise everyone's monthly distribution by almost 10%. So they're trying every which way they can to get this adjustment for this month, next month, and September. And that's what is really going on here. But it's temporary, it's fake, it's artificial, and you're right. It is all a big cycle.
Well, I'm telling you, and COLA, just for the viewers, I'm assuming you mean cost of living adjustment, right? That's what you mean by COLA.
Absolutely.
Okay, just so everybody knows
okay,
it.
yeah.
So that's one dubious reason, right? The other one is a small thing called midterms. I don't know. So you got COLA and midterms would be a great reason why you want to drive down those types of things. So I think you're absolutely right. And that's something that it could, well, not could, I think it will come back in their faces to haunt them.
Well, I think it's some kind of cognitive dissonance they're counting on by saying, have Biden go out and saying, inflation was 0 for July, yet people are still seeing that their grocery price went up, year over year through July. Groceries were 13.1% annualized, inflation year over year through July. So you can't say that there was no inflation in July, right? Because obviously there was. People are hearing that he's saying there's zero inflation in July, and then they're going and they're saying, well, milk went up and bread went up. And I buy that every week. So I really see that the price prices going up. What's happening?
I-
So you just can't tell people one thing and while they're experiencing another. Come on.
I agree. I employed that same line of thinking when I went home that day, and I said to my wife, look, I didn't gain any weight from June to July, so therefore I weigh nothing, right?
I love it.
So that's the type of logic that we're now forced to deal with, and it just doesn't make any sense. And I think that's why we're in trouble here. And we were talking off camera. I mean, we've got a lot of things to worry about, and there's some things that could, really come back to really haunt us. So I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Always great content with you. We'd love having you on, Rebecca Walser, Walser Wealth Management. Thanks for being on. Thanks. She's coming to us from Tampa, Florida.